All right, welcome to the show. Now, this gentleman right here, I have wanted to get him on the show for a long time. This is the man who's the creator of a company called Wilde Influence, and he is the top performing corporate trainer for Tony Robbins. If you know who Tony Robbins is, the personal development man himself. He was Tony Robbins' top salesperson for many, many years before starting his own company, and he's worked with thousands, it could be tens of thousands of people around the globe to transform their lives and businesses. In fact, I don't know how many have you trained? I don't even know how many events have you actually done around the world the last 12 years?
Just in Tony's company, I've done something around 3,300 trainings, companies like Salesforce, like every big real estate company, Keller Williams, like all these. I'm obviously a lot cheaper than Tony, so they would send me in instead of him, and I would teach a lot of his strategies, and then that was our funnel. But I don't know. I've lost count when I include my own stuff as well. So it's up there.
Well, I think you've probably traveled around the world like 500 times. I'm not even really sure. So welcome to the show, Mr. Eli Wilde. Eli, thanks for being on with us. It is a pleasure, my friend, to have you on the show.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get into this. I know our listeners have been dying. I've been prepping this for about a month or so, been dying to hear what you have to say. So before we dive into those questions, can you tell our listeners maybe, let's say, a little bit more about how you got started in sales, and really how did you get so good? Like, how did you learn all those skills?
I get asked this a lot, and it's like I wasn't like yourself. I wasn't a natural born salesperson. I was super quiet in school. I had a big gap in my teeth. And so I mumbled when I talked, even after I got braces. We were a really poor family. Just a lot of tragedy happened. My mom won the lottery when I was in high school. So my one thing is I want to get braces, but I still had this way of speaking where I didn't articulate, and I had a lot of insecurity just in my communication. And at a young age, I began to notice how certain people carried themselves, how they articulated, how they had this power and presence. And, fast way forward, but I moved to Los Angeles. I got a job in sales, selling dental products over the phone. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't articulate. You'd have to listen to your calls sometimes and listen to them with a manager. And, the first time you listen to yourself in even a voicemail or anything, you're like, oh, I sound like that. And, every day on the way back and forth to work, I'd put a pin in my mouth to force myself to articulate. And I really just began working on all aspects of myself, getting to self-development. And I ended up, I'm naturally competitive, so I was always the top salesperson.
Right.
But along with that, I started acting as well. And I think the acting, along with, I read the book Spin Selling, which I thought was really powerful at the time. Think and Grow Rich, all these books on mindset. But it was the acting stuff that really helped me as well with tonality and the connection and listening. There's a process called Meisner. Sure. That is really about responding to the energy inside of somebody, and that really helped me get present. So yeah, that was my thing, and I ended up getting cast in this huge movie back in 2003, 2004, and I didn't get it, and I was like really depressed and sad and just not doing anything.
Right.
And I ended up, studying NLP to get myself out of it. And I remember I was just talking to a friend at the grocery store one day. And I was talking about what I was going through. He said, you should check out NLP. And I did, and went back and I was like, this is amazing. And he said, well, you should check out Tony Robbins. And I was like, who's Tony Robbins? And I got the book, of course, and then the CDs. I got the personal power program on eBay for like $7.90. Wow. And I was just obsessed. And his voice and his charisma and just all of this kept me so engaged. Yeah. And I saw that he was speaking at one of these Learning Annex events.
Okay.
Kind of like a modern day Success Resources where they have the no money down real estate guy,
sure,
the get rich quick scheme guy, but it was like Donald Trump, Susie Orman, Robert Kiyosaki, and then Tony Robbins. And it was like $97, which was a stretch for me.
Right.
And all these people selling kind of inauthentic. Tony was supposed to speak for 2 hours, and he spoke for like 4.5. And at the end of that time, he said, if you got anything out of these effing 4 days, or 4 hours, spend 4 effing days with me, I'll give you your effing money back if you don't get some effing results. And he was just so committed. and so certain
Yeah.
and so charismatic. I used my rent money and I signed up for his event, Unleash the Power Within.
Right.
And I was just so mesmerized by what he did. And, we've all studied influence and sales and stuff, but there was something really magic about what he was doing and the courage and the insight to actually go out there into the audience and do interventions with suicides.
Okay.
And I ended up, of course, working for the company. But when I saw him turn around a suicide,
Sure.
I became obsessed with, like, what is he actually doing? What's his mental process?
Yeah,
What's the
exactly.
framework? And could I use that to turn around a sale?
Right.
And I just became obsessed with digging in and learning all the different language patterns and communication to reframe people. So that's, kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, and I know there's a lot that goes in there. We've talked about that, but I wanted to ask you some questions today that I really thought would help our listeners with their sales process and really help them get to the next level in their career. So first of all, I wanted to ask you, can you describe some of your biggest successes when you were in sales, like when you were a salesperson for Tony? I know you crushed it for Tony. You were his top salesperson. Can you describe like some of your biggest years in terms of like your income, your awards that you were giving? I've even heard that there's an award that Tony gives out to salespeople that has your name on it. It's like the Eli Wilde Award. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and in all transparency, my born name is Eli Wilde, but when I started my own company, I just changed it to Wild because I was like, wanted to be wildly influential and teach people to be wildly influential. And I was always kind of hiding behind Tony. And so I wanted to create my own thing. And now potentially Tony and I are going to partner on some stuff. But I worked for Tony for about 3 years.
Okay.
And in that time, I did good. I was pretty good. And I lived with Tony's son and brother-in-law, which was amazing to see that level of mentorship from his father and that advice. And, Tony said, jump. I was like, how high? So I did good. But I left the company after a few years and got back into acting. And it was right around the economy. 2008 had taken a bust, so it was bad on all levels.
Yeah.
And I ended up coming back to the company. But part of the reason I came back was because I'd been really sick. I got Epstein-Barr, which is like advanced mono. I was pushing really hard and just doing so much, not sleeping, working out 3.5 hours a day as a fitness model, and just completely burnt myself out. And Scott Humphrey, Tony's brother-in-law, called me one day, and he's just kind of, asking what's going on. And I told him, like, I'm in a really bad spot physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. Yeah. So he flew a date with Destiny, and I re-engaged with Tony and his wife and the team, and they asked me to come back, even though I was really sick. And so I ended up sleeping in bed for just like a few months. And I came back to work for Tony in February 2010.
Okay.
This really strong interaction. And that year, I came back to work for him. I came back to work in March, and I worked half the week, and I laid in bed or a hospital bed the other half the week. Wow. I was still really sick for the entire year. And in that time, I still broke every sales record. Right. And I did way better than I ever had in a down economy. Yeah. And, and so Tony, at the end of the year, he took me to Fiji for a week, got to ask him every stupid question I've ever wanted to ask him. Right. He created this chairman's award in my name, and now whoever's the biggest impact in his company gets it. And, he was coaching me a lot that year, and so were a lot of other people. Sure. And I really got in all my systems, and I got really focused. Yeah. And, and then, I just kept on dominating, and every year got better and better. And other people within the company and other companies started asking me, like, what are you doing different? My sales were 2 to 3 times back then. I would I would outsell the rest of the team myself. Sure. Yeah. With the same products, same scripts and everything, because the language is important. Yeah. But there's a strong mindset component, and I just really took it on. And so that became my saving grace was the tools that I learned there and applying them differently. And then having other people, other companies saying, what are you doing differently? Yeah. Well, you talk about it because I think some people out there, I think salespeople sometimes in general or companies might think, well, sales is just sales and like sales training is all the same, but you hit it right on the head is that no, it's completely different. Like if you're doing 2 to 3 times as many sales as the nearest person to you, and you're selling the exact same product with the same type of leads, everything's the same, but you're doing double to triple, there's obviously something that you are doing that they are not doing, and that's why you're so far ahead. And I wanted to ask you that. It leads us to our next question. What specific steps did you take
if you remember, to be the best at sales in your industry? What do you think were like 1 or 2 steps that you took to be the very best in that industry?
I was actually listening last night. I was up late and going back through my notes from Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it just the conditioning, the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And right now with the coronavirus, a lot of people have lost a compelling future.
Yeah.
And, I've been sick. And so that just that daily conditioning, because success is, 20% mechanics. We got to know what to do.
Yeah.
But it's 80% psychology. Two people have the same script, but having a compelling vision for yourself. And then, they say in the good book, they call the good book, without a vision, people perish.
Yeah.
And you have to have a vision for yourself.
Yeah.
But if your vision includes other people, like you and I, when we talk, it's like, there's so much crappy sales training out there.
Yeah.
We want to take a stand for all salespeople.
Yeah.
So vision just isn't about you, not even about your family. It's about community.
Yeah.
And so for me, the steps were really ingraining my routines. And I called this process THIN, THN, transforming human nature, because we're in a consumer society. We consume food and information, but the most successful people are not just consumers, they're producers.
Sure.
And so I entered into every conversation, not wanting to consume these leads in this sale, but I wanted to produce an outcome in a state. And I knew that something had to come out of me. And I really do believe that sales shouldn't just be transactional. Yeah. It should be transition.
Well, you're right, because if it is transactional, you're going to lose a lot of sales that you could be making, right? Because we talk about this all the time. Selling is not, manipulating, trying to win them over just so you can make money. Selling is all about actually solving that person's problem. That's really what sales is. You have to, we'll talk about this in a while, but you have to look at yourself as a problem finder and problem solver. You're there to actually solve problems. So when you let go of your attachment, your need of making the sale, and you focus on really whether or not you can actually help them solve their challenges, their problems, you become completely different. You become more opening to listening and understanding and showing empathy, but you're doing that in a very, let's say, skilled conversation, in a very persuasive way that gets that person to open up to you, to tell you what their problems are, to really allow you to actually solve those for them by them purchasing your solution. And instead of being a transactional sale where you have to play the numbers game, I'd rather talk to, 10 people and have 7 of them buy rather than talk to 100 people to get 3 or 4 of them to buy. It makes no sense to me.
100%. Yeah.
100% right. Now, can you share with us maybe a couple of things maybe 2 or 3 things that our listeners can implement, like starting right after they get off, this show, so they can start getting like a bigger result in their sales? What are a couple things they can implement right now that will help them start selling more starting today?
Awesome. So one, it's not exactly easy, but to go back and review some of your calls, good ones and bad ones. And I noticed something, and I spent like kind of a boys' weekend with Tony. It was me and just a couple other guys. We did like machine gun shooting in Vegas. And then we did like fight training with the guy that trains the Navy SEALs, like how to kill people and stuff. And Tony was teaching us lessons the entire time. And he taught me these things called postures. Okay. Once I got this, I really got it. Because there's a lot of stuff that Tony's taught me personally and just a handful of other people that he doesn't teach anywhere. And it's like, it's so good. Yeah. And out of all of it, the number one thing I'd say is postures. And when I got this, my income doubled overnight. Okay. And it's Tell us, what does that mean? What does postures mean? There's 3 postures that we speak from. And, and I don't mean to negate, but I'll give you examples of people in the industry that talk superior. So the first one's superior, second one's equal, and then there's inferior. Okay. And so most people get stuck into one of the 3 postures. And if you listen to Grant Cardone or Dan Locke, some of these people, they come off purely superior. Yeah. Listen to me. And if you look at their audience, it's a lot of younger people. Yeah. Because in order to be willing to accept that somebody's superior to you, you have to admit that you're inferior. Right. So it's kind of like, hey, you suck, and you suck so bad, that's why you need my thing, so you don't suck anymore. Right. So that's one way. And while superior, you need to be able to go there, but you can't stay there, because a lot of your audience, the people that are millionaires, and they're just they're kind of like, screw you. Yeah. I'm not going to be talked down to that way. So you do need to nudge it's slight though. And you can hear it in somebody's tonality. Yeah. The way that it commands. But I spend 80% of my time equal. And
Okay.
Tony, whether he's working with, people in prison or the president of the United States, just like a friend.
Yeah.
And, your whole thing, neutral language. So it's 80% equal. And then there's inferior language as well, where I might lift somebody up like, oh my God, you're amazing. Because some prospects that you talk to are, and I got this from Taylor, you'll talk to him, Taylor Welch. He's got this the concept of the buying pocket, where some people are like, they have a lot of ego. They're kind of like, well, I can just do it myself. And some people really insecure, like they want to get, say, 10% more leads or closes. And they're like, oh my God, that'd be so impossible. You're like, hey, you're making it harder than you think. Right. I talk to a lot of people not too smart. You can do this. So what it really comes down to is 1, sensory acuity, and 2, behavioral flexibility.
Okay.
And so figuring out where somebody is and how they're approaching you and how you use language to change postures consistently and not get locked into one. Yeah. So I could say, Jeremy, you're doing really great right now, but you've got to change things right now, don't you? But ultimately, I can't tell you what to do. You're a smart guy. I mean, look at all that you've created. I really admire you in your process. So I'm edifying you, but I think you're probably a lot like me. We do want to close more deals. We do want to spend more time with our families. We all want to have a great life, but something has to change, doesn't it? And so I'm like superior, inferior, equal. And so when I would go back and listen to my own calls, I could see where I was being too forceful.
Okay.
Or
being too superior. Right.
Yeah. Or sometimes really successful. And I was like, somebody would come to me that's making $10 million a year, $12 million a year. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, but they really wanted me to take leadership,
right? Like
to edify them and connect as a friend, but then to nudge them a little bit and just these nuances. And once I really figured out these postures, it was amazing. I ended up listening to, right after Tony taught them to me, I listened to a very old podcast, or it was called Power Talk. Tony interviewing a gentleman, and this man has a tendency to ramble on.
Sure.
And Tony goes, listen to me. It's like cutting him off. And he says, the great thing about you is, and edified him.
Sure.
But we want to know, you've done this and this and this. What we want to know is, how do you do this? And he redirected him with a different question to change his focus.
I like that. I see where that's coming from. That makes sense.
So that's what it sounds tactically, but understanding the postures on a conceptual level. And then the tactics is like, listen, let me pause you there for a second. Strong. And like, the great thing is giving them a compliment, combining it back to us, and then redirecting them.
Yeah, so they still feel like, wow, this person cares about me and I'm great in their eyes, type of thing. That makes complete sense. And it's all about, wanting your potential customers to feel tension. Now, what do I mean by tension? I don't mean by sales pressure. That's completely different. Whether you're speaking in front of an audience or you're selling one-on-one, you want them to feel tension that they want to resolve. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is you're asking the right questions that get them to psychologically take maybe problems or challenges or limiting beliefs that they have in the back of their mind, the subconscious, they buried away their dreams or whatever, and move those to their front of their mind, their conscious mind, where they feel that tension that they need to solve that challenge. They can only feel that tension if you learn the right questions to ask that take those problems and challenges and limiting beliefs from their subconscious to their conscious, that builds urgency for them to do something about it now. So it's about tension that they have to resolve, and you can only get them there by the questions you're learning to ask, and really your listening skills, I believe. That leads us to the next question. What do you feel is can you give us, I guess, your advice, because I love your advice, on what the most pervasive issue is in sales? What do you think the biggest issue is right now for salespeople?
Well, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. It's like they say, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And my background is different than yours because it's in behavior change, and we're a mindset company. Mm-hmm. And so a big part of it's mindset. And the ability to communicate. But, I teach in my program that there's these 4 levels of influence. And the base of it is how you influence yourself. Right. And we talk about emotional states. And even when people buy, we talk about putting them into a buying state. Because you've had days where it didn't make sense to buy something, but you're like, I just feel like buying it. And you're just in that state. Other times it made sense, but you were in a different state of mind.
Sure.
And so it's about managing and creating states.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as salespeople, really understanding that you can't give which that you don't possess. And if somebody says they got to think about it, or, I got to talk to somebody, what they're really saying is they're not certain.
Sure.
Not about you, themselves, that it's going to work.
Well, there's no trust there yet.
No trust.
There's something there they're not trusting. You're exactly right.
Trust, certainty, safety.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we create that?
Yeah.
But again, you can't give that which you don't possess. And so a lot of people get into these conversations, and it's a mindset issue where, and I've seen salespeople that have no skills really, but they're just so certain, so passionate, so committed, and they have just so much confidence. And it's like, they think they're the best at something. And I'm like, well, and I've bought people's programs because these people are so freaking certain. I'm like, man, this guy must have something. And then of course the program sucks, but it's like, they've just got so much certainty. And, I don't mean to beat up, I'm not even going to say the guy's name, but he had like this sales program came out a couple years ago. And so all these young people came to me looking for jobs that had been through his certification program. Yeah. And usually when I meet some salespeople, I'm like, you need to work on your confidence. Yeah. A lot of these guys in written and the way they approach me, I felt like saying to them, you actually have too much confidence. You're really not that good. Yeah. Because they thought they were so good. Yeah. But for most people, I think that it's their certainty and this emotional state. Yeah. You do lose a sale. Yeah. And you take that with you into your next call. Sure. That focus, the language, the energy, the lack of certainty. Yeah. We almost start having this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, let me give you an example. It's just like in football. Let's say that you're Tom Brady or you're Patrick Mahomes or you're Aaron Rodgers or somebody, and they throw an interception and they return it for a touchdown, and then they get the ball back 5 minutes later. You still see their certainty, right? Yeah. They're still able to throw a touchdown. That they don't take that bad play into their next part of their lives or their next play, because if they did, it would impact them bad. And that's where you see bad quarterbacks that do that though, right? They're throwing interception after interception because they keep taking that negativity, that bad play that they just had, into their next plays. The greatest ones, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron, Patrick Mahomes, all these quarterbacks, they have certainty. So they just let go of that last play because they know they're so certain because of their skill level. And as a salesperson, you only have that certainty, in my opinion, based on your understanding of the sales process, based on your understanding of why people buy or the psychology behind it. Because if you don't understand the tactical questions you're asking, if all you have is like, I'm putting in that song to get me pumped up before my sales calls, or I'm putting in a motivational CD to get me really excited about today. If you don't know the right questions to ask at the right time in the conversation, if you don't understand like why somebody buys, like what questions are going to get them to psychologically persuade themselves, if you don't have those skills, I don't believe you can have 100% certainty, because in the back of your mind, you don't know why somebody even bought or why they didn't buy. It's only when you learn those skills that you have, in my thought, complete certainty that if a call goes bad, it doesn't matter. You don't even think about it. You just go on to the next call because you have that certainty because of your skill level. Motivation is amazing, right? It's great to get motivated, but that can wear off quick after you make 100 calls and most of them reject you. Like, you're going to just keep getting motivated every day? No, it's like, it's like getting out of the shower. I mean, the water wears off very quickly. So once you learn the right skills, that creates that certainty. I call it a collective confidence. And it doesn't matter what you sell. You could be selling cars today, quit that job and go sell coaching, or quit coaching and become a financial advisor, or, sell real estate or sell insurance or cybersecurity. It doesn't matter what you sell, because all you have to do is replace those questions for that product or service and what problems they solve. And you literally can be the top salesperson in anything you do. Yeah. 100%. 100% of the time. That was a good discussion. So we don't talk about this enough either, but what warning, I know me and you have talked about it a little bit, but what warning do you have for salespeople that will help them avoid disasters in the future? What warning do you have for salespeople that would help them really avoid disaster?
To avoid disaster.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people right now are going to be doing this, outside of the sales world. You definitely need to have some income saved. I know that most salespeople kind of live feast or famine. I'm right now probably missing out on about $250,000 because two of my events canceled. But we're not worried. But at the same time, so I'd say one, have some money set aside, not only because you never know what's going to happen, but it's like, again, relates to certainty.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we always teach is neediness equals creepiness, or we have that commission breath where we're so hungry for our own reasons. I think that is when you should want to help people, but not need to help people. And if you come up needy, I think that it's just like you're psychologically leaning and people feel it. And so we say, when in doubt, lean out. Yeah. And when you have that space, you can show up and you can create space. In the coaching world, we talk about holding space.
Yeah.
And when people can kind of marinate in that process, they feel those feelings, and that internal tension you talk about comes up. And I'm like, do you want to? Do you want to? If I'm like asking all these questions, but I'm asking, I'm like, I'm really needy. And I'm like, come on, do you want it? Do you want it? Do you want it? Yeah. It's like, people are like, wow, and it's that super excited kind of pushy thing. Yeah. And so I think, and if somebody's not in a good financial spot, like I wasn't when I got sick, like doctors were telling me I was, could die. Wow. It really kind of dropped my certainty. Yeah. But I had to have certainty. And if there's like could be a spiritual belief or something like that, belief in the unknown. Yeah. But when people, when kind of the craps hit the fan, like it's going to for a lot of people. Yeah. The people that really rise are the ones that exude the most certainty in times of uncertainty. And certainty, whether some people need to have $1 billion, some people just need to be alive. Yeah. You need to be able to generate, just like a power plant doesn't have energy, it generates it. Yeah. You need to generate this certainty within yourself and have a belief about who you are, what you stand for, these personal standards that relate to your mission and your purpose of like why you're alive. And you can't let anything outside of you take that away. And if you enter into conversations when, if you lose that, then it's just a matter of time before you lose everything. And so really having a process to exude this certainty in times of uncertainty and who you are, whatever it's going to allow you to show up powerfully for other people, not for yourself.
Well, 100%. I mean, I think it's an important subject right now because with the coronavirus, things that have gone on that we're, starting to, we'll start to get through here in the next 30 days or however long it takes. I don't think it'll take much longer than that, but it's all about not coming from a place of need. It's about coming from a place to actually want to solve that person's challenges and problems, because human behavior, if you like you and I both study human behavior so much in psychology, is here's what happens when you come across a prospect and you are needy or overly excited. Okay, one of two things happen. Imagine when you go into a car dealership or Best Buy or wherever, and the salesperson says, "Hey, I'm so excited that you're here. We've got the best this, we've got the best this, let me show you this, we're going to get you the best deal." What do you typically do? Well, as a human being, you do one of two things, depending on your personality. If you're really A-driven personality, you're going to throw out objections really quick. You're going to be very short with that person, and you're going to reject what they're offering, okay? Pretty much everybody else is going to do something like this. "Oh, that sounds really nice. Oh, that sounds really good. I'm really interested. Can you give me more information? Can you call me back in a week, a month, a year later?" And when you call them back, they don't answer your phone call. They don't answer your text messages. They don't respond to your emails. And they go into what I call, witness protection program. So when you act from a place of need, like you need the sale, they're going to fill it and they're going to do one or two of those things. And that's why you're losing so many sales that you could be making. That triggers what's called sales resistance. So if you start out the conversation with that overly excited tone, it makes most people feel like they should be nervous, like you're trying to, manipulate them. Okay. So when you do that, you're automatically having them put up the wall, a barrier, and now you're having to try to overcome that wall. Why not use sales techniques that work with human behavior that prevent the wall from ever forming? That's the biggest difference. That's what you're talking about. How do you think salespeople, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but what are a few things that you do to kind of stand out in the market? Go back to your sales days. before your company, but what were a few things you did to really stand out in the market compared to other salespeople besides just mindset? Like, what are some things you did?
I structured my day in a way where a lot of it was prospecting.
Yeah.
And if I did do a meeting or a presentation, I made sure like I knocked it out of the park. Like it was so great. And I really, I got more referrals than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, and I followed up and we leveraged those and I built out a team. So not only did I have somebody internally within the Robbins organization that would call for me and follow up, I also hired my own person to do the paperwork and all that because I mentally, like before I even had the money, I was like, I'm going to build this thing big.
Yeah.
And I treated this like I was a W-2 employee for Tony, but I treated this like I am a licensed seller of tickets and events for the Robbins. Like I have my own.
It was like your own company or something.
I had my own company. And so I was in the mindset of a business owner, doing, morning check-in meetings with my team.
Yeah.
And now other companies that I'm a part of or coach, like I'll hop in on those meetings and see how they structure them, like clear outcomes for the days.
Yeah.
And I had those for myself. And I think that's really big. It's interesting now. I've been in this world. I started working for Tony in 2005.
Yeah.
And I partnered with the guys at Traffic and Funnels, Taylor Welch and Chris. And, it's interesting. I never really thought of myself as this like networker and stuff, but I pretty much know everybody.
Yeah.
You were the first interview that I'm going to do as a series of interviews.
Yeah.
But I made a list of about 80 people I want to interview and I have all of them in my phone.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's come to be really. Yeah. But I genuinely like people. Like when I talked to you, like before we were on here, I said, I was so grateful. Yeah. And whenever I've talked to a prospect, this wanting people to feel understood, not judged.
Yeah.
And appreciating, like feeling grateful when they get vulnerable.
Yeah.
And really let me know about their problems. I acknowledge them. And I teach my process is a little different than yours, but I teach that there's, as we probe and clarify and we find these problems, we expand these problems into other areas of their life.
Yeah.
And so if somebody has like a financial problem, I ask a series of questions where I get them to tell me how their problems financially are affecting them physically, stress, emotionally, their family, their friendships, their fun, their future, these 8 F's of influence. And so now this little problem, this could be fitness, where they tell me their fitness is affecting their finances. So we expand it.
Yeah, now they have 12 problems rather than 1.
Yeah, and it creates these real vulnerable moments. Yeah. And just like you teach, when we present a solution, we don't like when we hear the pain, we're not like, I have just the thing.
Yeah.
It's getting them hungry to a solution before we present our solution. And also, as I'm curious, I realize my solution might not be the best thing.
Sure.
And then if it is, I'm going to make a really strong recommendation.
Yeah.
With a lot of certainty, but only when I know. And, it's all about getting people to do what's best for them.
Yeah.
And what's best for them is going to be outside their comfort zone. So I'm resolving their concerns, not handling their rejections, because nobody wants to be handled. They should have concerns and dig into them. And then it's just a matter of choice.
And that leads into my next question. What do you think salespeople and companies should be doing right now in their downtime with the whole coronavirus? Should they be, sitting around sucking their thumb, watching Netflix all day, just sleeping, or what should they be doing with their downtime right now with the virus, salespeople and entrepreneurs?
It's interesting because I'm asked this a lot right now, and I see a lot of people doing like really low cost, free stuff. Like even Oprah and Deepak Chopra are doing this free 21-day challenge thing. Car companies are waiving like the first 3 months of payments. This is unprecedented. Yeah. But part of the reason my career took off after 2008, one of the books that I read was The Challenger Sale. Yeah. And I think now more than ever, that philosophy comes into play where there's the relationship builder, there's like these different psychological profiles of salespeople, but it's the people that can challenge somebody's thinking. Yeah. They can add perspective, challenge the paradigm and how they're thinking. Yeah. And now, not just the product that you sell is valuable, but this conversation, I become valuable to you is not only an advocate of your business, like, hey, you can do it, but really getting you to ask deeper questions. Yeah. And so that's why I believe that sales should, again, not be transactional, but transformational, where we transform the way people think. I teach that, and Robbins teaches that business mastery, there's something called a value chain.
Sure.
Somebody not knowing you to clicking on a link to, being sold and, getting a referral. There's a chain of events. And so what moves somebody so I teach the sales value chain, from somebody clicking to hopping in a group to whatever, maybe consuming a piece of content for free, hopping on a call. Even inside the call, there's this willingness to move forward where they begin leaning in. And what gets people to go further down the chain, and again, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Sure.
And so when I listen to calls, I'm listening for where did things kind of break off? And what moves somebody from one part of the chain to the next are their thoughts and feelings. And so when we look at like a sales process, when we look at this what I call the emotional like behavior chain, results in life or business or health or whatever come from actions. Actions come from decisions about what to do, what to focus on, what something means. But the decisions that we make, and also decision-making ability, is what separates successful people from not, according to Think and Grow Rich.
Sure.
Getting people decisive, that comes from their thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And their thoughts and feelings come from their beliefs and what they believe about themselves, about the market, the economy, about life, whatever. These beliefs come from their experiences.
Sure. Their backgrounds.
And so, in self-development, they talk about, you have limiting beliefs and all this stuff, or you need to take more action or make a decision, too much pressure. Mm-hmm. And so the areas I attack with my question as I'm consulting somebody I'm coaching or even a prospect, is I'm getting them, we're really looking at their thinking and how they make decisions and how they feel. Yeah. And we're putting those thoughts, feelings, and decisions in alignment with somebody who's a buyer or somebody who's successful. Sure. And so I'm really asking a lot of questions about their thought process and getting them to think differently about their problems, about what they want, about their identity. Yeah. Somebody who's a leader in times of challenge versus somebody who's not. And then they make decisions at the highest level. At the lowest level, people make decisions about like, should I buy or not buy? Yeah. The next level is like, do I want the result or do I not really want the result? And then at the next level, it's who do I want to be versus who am I committed to not be? Sure. And get these people to identify as a leader, somebody who's an action taker, somebody who's a decision maker, and really be strong in that identity and see how my product, service, or idea is in alignment with what they're committed to. Yeah. And they've been telling me that for 30 minutes. Well, it's really hard for them to say they're not going to be that type of person who's willing to make the change when that's what the whole conversation's been about. Well, and you I resonate with that so much because, in our training that, you've gone through and stuff, we talk a lot about you have to be really, really good at problem finding. And I think right now with the whole virus thing going on and people saying, oh, we'll just, wait, get back to us in a month or two and this all blows over. You have to be like really, really good at problem finding. And what does that mean? That means finding problems or uncovering challenges or issues or problems that your prospect didn't even think they had, right? Yeah. Because if you can't ask the right questions that help them uncover those challenges or issues or problems that they've buried in the back of their mind, it's impossible for them to create urgency in their mind that they actually want to solve those and actually solve those with you. And I find that, right now, well, even before this happened, that most salespeople, I'd say probably 98%, are what I call product pushers. Yeah. They're product pushers, right? What they do is they show up, they ask a few questions because you're taught, hey, let's ask, people are taught, ask a couple questions, right? To find out about their problems, but they're just surface level questions. They don't go deep. They don't pull any emotion out. They're, it's like the layers of the onion. The more layers of the onion you pull off, the more they find out about themselves, and the more that helps you get them to persuade themselves. So they ask these surface questions, and then the prospect tells them a couple problems, and then like you said, they go in for the pitch, right? They go in with their solution, talking about the features and benefits and how they have the best this and the best that, which, by the way, every salesperson says they have the best. Yeah. How many salespeople that have ever sold anything said, oh, yeah, my product's about the 5th best in the market? No. Everybody says that, so it goes in one ear out the other. And because they present their solution so quickly, it leads to objections and rejection very quickly. And they wonder why they're not really selling, and especially right now. If you enter in your solution too early in that conversation
without really asking the right questions to get them uncover problems, like I said, that they didn't even think or realize how bad they were, or if they even had them. I call that selling on hopium. It's a drug that so many salespeople are on, right? Have you ever heard of that term, where they just hope and pray that something they're going to say is magically going to make the person just want to buy them? And it's such a hard and unpredictable way to make a living. It's just crazy that people do that. All right, let's go to the next question. We could talk about that for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So you've gone through a lot of sales training, obviously, because you've crushed it. You started even, doing a little bit of training with us, NEPQ, a couple of years ago. But what I wanted to ask is, you were already at the top of sales in your industry. You were already the best of the best with what you sold. Why do you feel that you wanted to go through more training so you're already at the very top? Salespeople ask me that. Like, I'm already at the top. Why should I go through more training? Why did you go through more training?
Well, it's interesting. In my background being with Tony, and as a lot of people are going through, kind of relate back to your last question, I'll build on it. With all this uncertainty, in times of challenge, there's people right now that need the training. Yeah. Those people that usually wouldn't come to our programs or buy from me or you right now really need it, and they recognize it. Yeah. But top people always are looking for an edge. Yeah. That's why they're top people. Yeah. It's like, Michael Jordan, like he won a championship, is training even harder the next year because he's got a bullseye on his back. Oprah, these people, there's a psychology of people that are the top. And you said this, and I got this from, I think it was from your webinar, salespeople spend like $35 a year on training. Like
the average salesperson. Yep.
Yeah. I've gone to events speaking at real estate companies. Like, who here has read a sales book in the last year? No hands. I'm like, this is what you do for a living. Like your livelihood, and you work on 100% commission. Yeah. Like, well, the company doesn't train us. And, we're a training company at Robbins, but so that's part of the culture. Sure. But a lot of people, even within Robbins' organization, Tony's got overwhelming amounts of content, and it's amazing. Yeah. But you should always be looking for an edge. Yeah. And I think that all successful people, including myself, I'm super competitive. But as I learn distinctions, like, even your stuff, yeah. I was telling all my friends that, potentially my competitors, I'm like, you got to learn from this guy too, because I want everybody to get better. And then I see how you do it, and I'm like, that's going to make me better. Yeah. And I think that when you're really committed to be the best at what you do, like Tiger Woods was the best in the world, and then he changed his swing. Like, you don't change your swing when you're already the best. Yeah. He's like, I don't want to be the best right now. I want to be the best of all time. Yeah. And he, staged the largest comeback in history, people say, back surgeries and all that, because he's got that compelling future and that vision and a strong identity. Yeah. And I think when you identify yourself in that way, you're just, that the training never stops. And
well, yeah, you look at it as, there's the motto that we live by here at 7th Level is training something that you did, or is training something that you do? Because you hit it, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods, every top athlete, every top celebrity, every top movie star continually trains. And the ones who don't become irrelevant. They might hit their peak for a while, but then you never hear anything about them again because they stop training. The same is true for salespeople. It doesn't matter if you're already making, $150,000 a year or $100,000 or $250 or whatever. If you don't keep accelerating, if you don't keep learning new skills, number one, you're never going to make more money, because you can't keep selling the same way you are now and expect to somehow double your income, right? What, are you going to double your working hours? That doesn't make any sense. When I hear sales trainers say, oh, if you want to make more, you just got to work more. Really? Interesting. How does that work? Like, if salespeople already work 10 hours a day, they need to work 20 hours a day? I'm not sure. Help me understand. That's just a lazy excuse for my training doesn't really work that well. That's really all it is. That's what I tell salespeople. If you ever heard a sales trainer says you just got to work more to earn more, okay, that sounds great. I've been in events where I'm like, okay, raise your hand if you work hard, if you show up and do your calls and you work at least 8 hours a day, raise your hand. Guess how many people raise their hand? Everybody. Everybody raises their hand in the room. And then I'm like, okay, I want you to stand up if you're making all the money you've ever wanted to make as a salesperson. Stand up right now. Nobody. Room goes quiet. Crickets. Nobody stands up. So I say, okay, so what I think I hear all of you saying is that hard work doesn't mean that you're just going to make a lot more money in sales. Would you agree? And everybody's like, it's like this revelation, because they hear hustle muscle and you got to work hard and call hundreds of leads to make those sales. But it's all about your skill level. It's about your certainty to have that confidence, but it's about what you're saying when you actually get somebody on the phone. What are you asking them that's going to cause them to buy from you or not buy from you? It doesn't matter how hard you work if you don't have those skills 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I could go off on that for a while. What do you think the difference is? What do you think is the main difference between selling now compared to what it was 20 years ago to even 10 years ago? What do you think the main difference is?
Well, and as you say, trust is dead from 2008 and all that happened. But now just with buyer awareness and the internet, it's like you can't rely on a salesperson. People don't rely on salespeople to get their information. Now we're drowning in information. And so we got so much. It's not about product knowledge. We can Google, we can get a review, we can get the information. And so I think that, as far as sales changing, some of it's relationship based, which is always going to be there, but really making sure that you stand out. Your attraction based marketing, social media is huge for that. And a lot of companies have been slow to catch on that are now getting involved. And Gary Vaynerchuk said this like 2006 or 7. He said, eventually you're not going to need a resume. People are just going to Google you. And you need to have this digital footprint as a company, as a salesperson. People, they want to find out like who you are. And as you create these relationships in the way, like even if you work for a company, like we've got coaches that sell, or we've got salespeople that sell for coaches on Facebook, but the ones that are really successful, they do their own attraction-based marketing online. So copywriting, driving people into messenger conversations. I think social selling, and that's the people that I coach are mostly in that world, selling coaching, it could be social media marketing or fitness stuff, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And so how do we, use these social platforms, which are really inexpensive compared to, Google ads or whatever it is.
Sure.
And so really, look at the process of sales. I think it's changed where it used to be just door knocking and, calling a bunch of cold leads. We've got so many more tools now where those things, the funnels have changed.
Sure.
The way that we get people buying in, that commitment and consistency, and the way that we follow up. And one of the companies I consult with, they have a lot of low-end products. And as soon as you buy, like somebody will text you, hey, did that download okay?
Yeah, right.
Using so many different avenues to get people ideally to this one place where you can do a presentation or have a powerful sales conversation. Like leading up to it, as you said, your words, trust is dead.
Sure.
And like, even a couple of years ago, people would, see a Facebook ad, hop on a webinar, buy a $2,000 program or a $5,000 program of a webinar. It's not happening now. So just trust, people are so, the trust is
they've been enamored with it, right? When you continually see the same thing over and over and over, as a consumer, you catch on, right? That maybe this is not reality, or maybe it's not true. 20 plus years ago, what was the bridge between the company and the consumer? It was, of course, the salesperson. The company would send out the salesperson to educate the public. And that's the way the public, besides like radio and TV or newspaper, really bought, right? You were educating them on what you did. But like you said, with the power of technology and especially social media, the internet, we live in a completely different age. The consumer already knows all about your company. They know about your products, your services, your price point, who your competitors are. They know how long you've been in business. They know everything about you by simply doing a Google search on their phone. And because of that newfound power, they're no longer going to be manipulated by pushy manipulative salespeople, because they know they have many choices to choose the exact product or service that you sell. 100%. What's we're going to end here in a second. What's one thing you do to open up your potential customers that you think might help our audience? What's one thing you do to just get them to somehow open up to you?
To open up?
Yeah, just to open up to you. What's one thing you ask or say to really get them to open up to you in your sales conversations?
I tell you, it's based on the marketing. A lot of people are open, but one of the companies I was consulting for last year, I just took sales calls as a salesperson just to kind of get a sense of it. And a lot of people really resistant. And so something that, can open people up, I call it quid pro quo. Whatever you're wanting them to experience, you give a little to get a little, is the quid pro quo term. And so in this exact example, was selling a woman write a book in 90 days.
Okay.
Type thing. Write the book and get published, get the bestseller on Amazon, all within 90 days. And so I was asking her, what do you want to write a book about? These basic questions, and kind of all over the place. And I could immediately tell, based on these responses, well, romance and cookbook and this and that, and it's going to go nowhere because I've got to get a specific thing. And so we ask specific questions, but I'm not just looking for specific questions. I'm not trying to be the best question asker. I'm looking for specific information.
Yeah. You're trying to find out what she means by what she's saying. Yeah.
And so it's just kind of all over the place. And I said, can I share something with you personal about myself? People are always going to say, yeah. And I was like, well, I didn't have, my parents are amazing, but I didn't have the best role models. What really changed my life? Were books. Here's how it changed my life. This one book. Can you think of a book that changed your life? How did it change? You're like, yeah. And I said, well, the reason we're having this conversation is so that you could be that for somebody else. So that after you're gone, so what really drives people, part of the try is the meaning.
Right.
And so sometimes we get people to the meaning of the conversation, the meaning of having the product. What that means to them is we extend the benefits, not just the book, the feature, but so that in order to allow you to, and here's what would that mean to you?
Yeah.
And so with these benefit linking phrases, so that X, which would allow you to this, to be able to that, what would that mean to you?
Sure.
And so finding the dominant buying motive and changing the context of what this conversation is, as opposed to, hey, what do you got?
Yeah.
Getting people deeper in these conversations when they're very resistant sometimes will require me getting vulnerable myself. Get a little.
You're being authentic, and that, kind of last thing I wanted to comment on is that in sales, there's really 3 errors of salespeople, and if you're listening right now, as you're driving to work or whatever, or at home, write this down. Error number 1 was the days of boiler room selling. Wolf on Wall Street, manipulate them, pressure them, posture them, show them who's boss, be aggressive, always be closing, superior, right? Like you talked about, be enthusiastic, really excited when you sell. That was error number 1, 60s, 70s, 1980s. Error number 2, came out in the late 80s, early 90s with consultative selling, like books like you read, Spin Selling, that came out like 1986 or something. And it talked about how you needed to ask questions. Wow, what a revolutionary thought. You needed to ask questions to find out their problems. And these were logical-based questions, more logical-based questions like, Mr. Prospect, what are 2 problems that you have? Or Mr. Prospect, what keeps you awake at night? That old cliche question. But what's the problem with only asking logical-based questions? When you only ask logical-based questions, your prospects give you logical-based answers in return. And do people buy on logic or emotion? They 100% buy on emotion, as you know, coming from behavioral science. So more persuasive than being aggressive and pushy and, assuming the sale, more transactional sale, but you're still playing the numbers game because very little emotion is brought out by simply asking logical-based questions. And now we're in error number 3. You're the most persuasive with kind of like what Eli's been talking about when you allow others to persuade themselves. And what Eli has gone over is what's called dialogue. It's really called dialogue. You're asking the right questions at the right time. We call it NEPQ, neuro-emotional persuasion questioning. You're asking the right questions at the right time that allows it to go deep, that allows your prospect to uncover challenges and problems and issues that they didn't even really think they had, or they didn't know the extent of how bad it was, or maybe it's not a problem yet, but if they don't do anything in the future, it can become a problem. Like, what are the consequences of that? So that's error 1, error 2, error 3. What we also have to realize is that not only are there 3 errors of salespeople, but there are 3 areas of consumers. So if you are still using error 1 or error 2 sales techniques on today's error 3 consumers or buyers, Do you see why you're not selling the way you could be? Because if you're using techniques from error 1 and error 2, but today's prospects are in error 3, you see that disconnect. It's going to happen every time. Eli, that was an amazing call. And thanks for being on the show. I've been waiting for you to come on here a lot because our methodologies are so similar, and the way we think about, helping people solve their problems and really uncovering, we're both like, behavioral science geeks and human psychology. I mean, that's what we sit around and talk about in our conversations, like two guys would talk about football or hockey or basketball. Yeah. How do our listeners learn more about you and your training programs? Like where can they go to learn more about Eli Wilde and your programs?
A couple times a year, I do something called Influence Academy. It's based on my results with Tony. People just started saying like, can you help me where, listen to our calls, dial in like the marketing, the system. So I just do that a couple times a year, and it's invite only, but people can find me on Facebook, and I've got a free Facebook group where I share a lot of this stuff. It's elite level influence.
Level influence.
Yeah, as I posted your interview in there. So I post stuff in there every single day. And then I partner with the guys at Traffic and Funnels. You're going to interview Taylor soon. Yeah. And we created another company called the Sales Mentor. Okay. I'm the Sales Mentor. We just started a new program called Inbound Closer. Yeah. A lot of people need jobs right now. Sure. We've enrolled, I think, 800 people in the course in the last couple of weeks, teaching people how to sell from home and create an interview, a process there, because we get about 5,000 to 6,000 new paying customers in that company, Traffic and Funnels, every month. Sure. A lot of those people become clients, entrepreneurs, and they need salespeople. Right. So this is the way we need to give you quality training, get you so good that we can place you as an agent. So we're training a lot of people right now, and we're going to start placing them. So, so either one of those ways, the Sales Mentor, which you can find on Facebook, there's a Facebook group, and then my thing, Elite Level Influence. It's my initials, by the way, ELI.
Perfect. And we'll get those links from you. To make sure our viewers can go there to learn more about you. Eli, thanks so much. You're a true blessing to not only me, like our friendship that I have. I'm very grateful for that. But you're a blessing to just everybody that hears you. So I'm really excited that more and more people are hearing what you're offering, because it can literally change their life. Thanks for being on.
Thank you, brother.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple six-figure, high six-figure, even seven-figure earners. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're going to win some killer prizes. And here's the thing. Don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about.